Welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones, and we're so glad to have you here. A new Stockton University poll shows overwhelming support across New Jersey for stronger regulations on social media to protect children's mental health. Nearly 9 in 10 voters say social media is harming kids, and 3/4 want tougher rules, even if it means limiting some online freedoms. Standing by is Alyssa Maurice, Assistant Director of the William J. Hughes Center for Public Policy at Stockton University. First, new legislation in Trenton aims to transform New Jersey's criminal justice system by expanding a program that combines legal defense with social services. The goal? Better outcomes for defendants, fewer repeat offenders, and major taxpayer savings. Assemblyman Gary Sher, the prime sponsor of the bill, joins us now to explain this statewide holistic defense model and why he believes it's a smarter way to deliver justice. Assemblyman, welcome to the show. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
You've introduced this bill. It's a 4897 to create a statewide holistic defense model. That's not a word you hear very often. So can you explain in simple terms what this bill would do and how it really would change the way the Public Defender's Office serves clients?
Well, first, let me tell you that and share with you that of all the bills that I've written, it is a rare circumstance where you create a win-win-win. Win for the taxpayers, win for the clients, win for the judicial system as a whole. And this bill does it all. It was initiated over a year ago, just a year ago. Former Governor Murphy initiated this program whereby people on the verge of incarceration could receive services through the Office of the Public Defender. And those services essentially would act to stop in midpoint the behaviors which are causing incarceration. So we know, for example, that someone without housing, without a place to sleep, is going to have a problem in operating in society. Someone who never received a high school diploma is going to have a problem integrating into society. And this goes on and on and on. What the bill does is treat criminality as, I don't want to say it's a disease, but I will say that it is a way to look at the totality of the issue, the totality of the person, and through the work of social workers throughout the state, have those individuals serve to assist a person where those negative behaviors would be confronted and stopped before they went on any further. So a social worker would be attached to each person covered in the plan. And right now we have a good number of people working with us in 3 counties. What the bill would do would be expanded to all 21 counties. And we think the approach, again, will be holistic, whereby we're working with all of the negatives, if you will, that the person is receiving.
Yeah.
And it would act as a corrective.
When you look at somebody who has committed a crime and you start to peel back, not in all cases, but a lot, there's often a reason why. They grew up in a bad situation. They might have been victimized themselves. They might have not had any alternatives. It explains, it doesn't excuse the bad behavior. It doesn't excuse the punitive portion of you do something, there is a penalty. Actions have consequences. So, how do you, some people don't have a lot of empathy for people who have committed crimes. But again, when you start to peel back and look, it's like, well, gosh, yeah, this person didn't come from a great situation. Is that a hard sell, explaining to people in the legislature with so many other priorities going on right now, so many other things, to put time and energy behind this?
So I'm not going to be an apologist for criminal behavior. I shouldn't be. There's no reason for it. It would be inappropriate. What I am a proponent of is saving tax dollars, And we estimate that an average incarcerated individual costs the state $75,000 a year.
Wow.
This program would cost 6 million, would cost $6 million, $2 million each year over 3 years.
Yeah.
The program would save effectively everyone at the $75,000 lay, and that would represent net savings to the state, potentially of tens of millions of dollars. It
So,
would also,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry,
No, I was going to say, you finish. I didn't mean to step on you there.
it would save millions of dollars in otherwise incarceration fees. It would provide a new beginning, a new opportunity for the person who would otherwise be incarcerated. It would give hope to them, to their families, and other beneficiaries of the program. So we're very excited. This seems to be taking advantage of all the most newest, most available thoughts that are going on. Over 22 states right now have the program, and it seems to be operating extraordinarily well.
So here in New Jersey, you mentioned there are some counties that are implemented, and it's based on a successful pilot in Atlantic, Hudson, Monmouth counties. So what is the data showing you? You know, who are we talking about? Because it was showing, from what I understand, a 400, a significant increase in service connections and an arrest-free rate. Can you talk about some of the statistics? And again, what types of criminals are we talking about too?
Well, let's understand first and foremost that of the people who participate in the program, only one um, fell under the framework of recidivism. Only one person went back to criminality.
Wow.
That's a pretty amazing statement.
Wow.
Not only that, but $75,000 per person is being saved by the taxpayer.
Is this the first time the state would be taking action to address and actually, again, looking to break that cycle and actually rehabilitate?
Right now, there are two major organizations, one in the north, one in the south. The south is headed by, or the north rather, it's headed by former Governor McGreevey. It is an exciting program that he is running. It can do more. And the way that it can do more is by receiving the support of the state to expand the coverage area, first and foremost, to expand the professionalism. Right now, we've got some excellent people working out of the public defender's office, some excellent people with vision, with commitment, and with the knowledge and a certain understanding that what they're doing will effectively, conceivably, save someone's life.
Yeah.
That's what we're aiming to do here.
Yeah, because public defenders, they currently represent about 75% of those facing criminal charges. And again, it's not about excusing behavior. It's not about giving people a pass. Can you talk about how this bill helps attorneys focusing on legal work and again, trying to get to that end goal of ensuring the cycle is broken and you're not just creating a person who's forever going to be in the system, a career criminal, for lack of better words?
I think that this is an opportunity for the state to do something proactively, humanely, logically, intellectually. It checks all the boxes. It seems to suggest that this is indeed a way out of the morass of recidivism, a way out of the morass of a failed prison system. Integration into society with support mechanisms which exist in all, if not most, if not all, communities throughout the state. The availability of qualified and expert social workers who will be doing everything except legal work, which of course will fall to the attorneys. It's coordinated by the Public Defender's Office. It's being utilized now in over 22 states and a number of cities and other municipalities. We have it all there.
it's budget season. There are a lot of priorities. A lot of people in New Jersey are struggling to pay their bills. How confident are you? Hopeful are you that this bill will be passed and make it to the governor's office and become the law?
I'm convinced that the more people that hear about the bill, the direction of the bill, and what we hope to accomplish and how we hope to accomplish it, I think that people are going to call up their representatives, their assembly members, their senators. They're going to speak to their mayors and say, listen, what's the downside? And there is none. There is absolutely no downside. What there is an opportunity for the state to save money, clearly and evidently, and it's already been in practice. I don't know how much it gets better.
Yeah. Well, Assemblyman Weed, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this, explain how this works, and ultimately, how it benefits not just those a part of the program, but society in general. We appreciate your time and look forward to having you back as this bill makes its way through the legislature.
You're very kind. Thank you. Appreciate it.
A new poll from Stockton University reveals overwhelming support in New Jersey for cracking down on social media to protect kids' mental health. Nearly 9 in 10 voters say social media is harming young people. 75% back stronger regulations, even if it limits some online freedoms. Joining us now is Alyssa Maurice, Assistant Director of the Hughes Center for Public Policy at Stockton, who ran the poll. Alyssa, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
You too. Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. So this poll is showing 91% of New Jersey voters say social media is having a major impact on children's mental health. Can you talk just a little bit about the significance here, the level of concern compared to some of the other issues you've polled? 91%, wow, that's huge.
Absolutely. That's really notable that we found so much consensus around this issue, because that's not always the case on a lot of things that we poll about, especially these days. We knew that children's mental health and online safety was a big focus for Governor Mikie Sherrill, both as a candidate and now since she's taken office. She's proposed a few things to try to combat this issue. In her proposed budget, there's funding dedicated to school-based mental health services. She proposed, starting a social media research center at a New Jersey university and so on. And we also saw that there's been a slate of bills recently proposed in the legislature to try to regulate these online platforms. So we wanted to see, do people in New Jersey agree that this is a major issue? Do they think that social media companies should be held accountable, or is this an issue that parents need to be responsible for? And we found that voters overwhelmingly agree with Governor Sherrill that this is a major problem. 58% said children's mental health is a very serious issue in this state. 91% think social media is playing a massive role in those mental health challenges that we're seeing. And 77% were concerned about children being exposed to harmful content online. So overwhelming support for this across demographics, across both parents and non-parents, across the board, really.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it often goes to, well, whose responsibility is it? Is it the parents' responsibility, or is it government? And usually there's more of a split, but you're seeing 75% of voters support strong regulations on social media platforms to protect kids, even if it limits some freedom. So what is this telling you about those here in New Jersey, where they stand on balancing between safety and their online liberty and the government's role versus a parental role?
That's exactly right. 75% said those stronger regulations are needed. Only 17% said online freedom should be prioritized, even if it means fewer restrictions for kids. So we see that there's broad support for more regulation around this. As many as 93% favored requiring social media companies to enforce stronger data privacy standards for minors. 88% support displaying warning labels on content that could negatively affect children's mental health. And we know those black box warnings are something that has been proposed here in New Jersey. And 79% support increased funding for school-based mental health services. Now, we did see that that was one area where Democrats and Republicans differed just a bit, was on spending towards this issue. So Democrats were more supportive of increased funding for school-based services by 34 percentage points. So they did diverge there, but a majority of Republicans were still in support.
Yeah. So let's go over some other things in the poll. It found extremely high support for certain measures. 93% are backing stronger data privacy standards for minors. 88%, as you mentioned, the warning labels. 74% want more government oversight of AI algorithms that pushes this content to children. Is there anything, the algorithm is amazing. The things that it not only pushes, and then I hear my own kids starting to say things, and it doesn't have to be, the latest saying or something. It can be something political. It can be something health related. It can be something fashion, like the things that are being pushed out to them. And I'm thinking, gosh, when I was in high school, or I wasn't thinking about some of the things that they are talking about. And part of it, I'm like, well, I'm glad you know the information. Some of this is really wrong, though. Any results really surprise you?
Yeah, that AI piece is really interesting because our polling has consistently found a lot of uneasiness around AI generally across the board, among all demographics and across the political aisle. So we did also ask about those AI-driven algorithms that you're talking about that really dictate the content that people see online. Cheryl, in her policy platform, especially as a candidate, actually called for greater oversight over these social media algorithms. And we found that most voters are familiar with how this works, how AI is driving what kids see online, and 74% were in favor of increased government oversight of how AI is being used to recommend content, particularly to children. 18% were opposed to that. So, we asked specifically about these AI-driven algorithms because we know that there is a lot of uneasiness around the ways that AI has been infused into everyday life for people.
Well, and while this is focused towards young people, it's easy for adults to be misled, misinformation. But back to your poll, 68% of voters say both social media companies, parents, they should be equally responsible. So when it comes to shared responsibility, how do you shape policy then when it comes to that responsibility? That's a fine line to walk, really, for those in elected office and parents.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a key piece to this because I think really that overall view kind of drives how you feel about these regulations in place on social media companies. If you largely think that it's the parents' responsibility, then you may not agree with imposing these restrictions or holding the tech companies responsible. So that was an important piece to measure. And we did see that the majority think that both social media companies and parents have a role here. And, there were 19% who said parents should be primarily responsible and 12% who put the onus mostly on technology companies. But the vast majority think that this is a shared responsibility. And something that Cheryl has brought up in a lot of her, public statements on this issue is that parents feel overwhelmed by the tools that are available to them to monitor their kids' activity online. These tools change constantly, technology changes constantly, and it can be hard for voters to keep up. So I think they're looking for help from these tech companies to sort of help do that work for them in protecting their kids online.
I mean, and then it's also bleeding, it has been in the classroom as well, because there are some forms of technology, a lot of forms of technology, AI, that can be very helpful, but it also can lead to, again, a slippery slope of how many people are going to ChatGPT and having essays written for them. Now I know teachers can go in and there are ways to monitor, which is a great thing. But then, when you start looking at it, it's like, wow, a teacher can look and see exactly what time I started to type this and then what corrections I was making. It's it feels dystopian sometimes. The technology is amazing, but it's like, oh, is this a good thing?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at a flashpoint right now. I think this is a watershed moment, especially for educators, as you're saying. I think a lot of people are looking at what these technologies are having what kind of impact they're having on student success, student outcomes. These are all things that are being studied right now because the technology has advanced so rapidly. And so these are the things that policymakers need to be looking at, and legislation often needs to catch up because tech can outpace it.
Right. Well, and also AI can make things look very real. It can exploit it. If you, even as a parent, if you put a picture of your child, a lot of people are really afraid. You're sharing a picture of your child, of milestones on Facebook, on social media. You don't know who is getting that, maybe manipulating it, using it for nefarious purposes. It's really scary how far down that rabbit hole you can go when you start thinking. For as much of a blessing technology can be, it can be really, really scary as well. And it feels like technology is getting smarter than some people.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the AI generated content. We had a poll on AI in 2024, and we found overwhelming support for requiring online platforms to explicitly label when content was AI generated. So we're seeing a lot of that online. It is hard to tell for many people what content is real and what has been generated with AI. So overwhelming support for making that more clear and making that a legal requirement. And just on the issue in general, we did see that women tend to be more concerned about this issue and are more supportive of regulations on these social media companies. But majorities of both men and women were concerned and supportive of these guardrails. But we did see that this is higher rates of women were in support of these regulations. So that was an interesting piece.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, moms tend to be a little more, we worry about things that we're worrying about, and if we're forgetting to worry about things, but that's kind of the nature. And the other thing about the requiring the notice that this has been AI generated, when you look in the comments of certain things, because I'll go down those rabbit holes, it's like I'll say, oh, and it will say, oh, it's AI generated, but then people still don't believe. They're like, oh, wow, look at that, and it's like, wow, they're not even paying attention. So it's people have to take responsibility themselves. But again, your poll is showing that there's, bipartisan agreement, when it comes to these protections. And there's only so much, government can do, right? People have to take responsibility for themselves. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for lawmakers from both sides to come together on this issue when it gets back to protecting our young people?
Yeah, well, I think, what we tried to do in this poll is ask about things that have been considered here in New Jersey so that it was relevant for policymakers here in the state. And so we did see that there was overwhelming support for requiring stronger data privacy standards for users under 18. So that was a really, there was widespread support for something like that. 88% support those black box warnings that have been proposed on content that could be negatively impacting children's mental health. And then we saw widespread support for that increased funding for school-based services. So these are all things that have been pitched here in the state. And so those are recommendations that policymakers can take from the voters on where to go from here. And to your point, we saw majorities across all demographics really view this as a serious issue and were supportive of these legislative guardrails. The differences were only in the intensity of that support. As I mentioned, higher rates of women, but ultimately it was majorities across demographics. And so policymakers can take that and know that this is an issue where there's a lot of consensus among voters.
Can you talk to a little bit about, that point gap, 34% point gap between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to increasing funding for school-based mental health services? What is that telling us? Because a lot of schools, a lot of children are not able to read. They're not handling the fundamentals. And now we're going to have schools have to deal with social media, yet maybe social media is the reason why a lot of students are struggling. The chicken and the egg, how do they really pull back root causes, address that so schools can focus on teaching, not have the distraction, use technology in a responsible way, and ensuring that, because I know my public school district, there was a terrible issue with bullying online with a bunch of middle school girls where all the parents had to get called in, which it's just, that's so sad. That's really so sad.
Yeah, that was an interesting piece, that one measure where we saw Democrats and Republicans diverge. It was on the increased funding for those school-based services, and we saw that 59% of Republicans were in support of increasing that funding versus 93% of Democrats. So again, that's a 34-point difference there. Still a majority among both parties, but they did diverge on this issue. And I think on some level, it's related to spending, right? So Republicans tend to be more fiscally conservative when it comes to government spending. So that could be playing into it. I also think that there has been a rise in this parents' rights movement in schools, and that tends to be on the right. And so I think Republicans may also see, mental health services and therapy as something that parents should have full control over and should be pursuing outside of school. They may see that as a line where that may not be appropriate for an in-school service. So I imagine that parents' rights perspective could also be driving that difference among the parties on this issue.
Yeah, fascinating study. Even when you want to get away from social media, it is very hard to. Just the other day, I was trying to order a bagel, couldn't get a menu, and I had to download an app, and I'm like, I don't want to download an app. I just want to order my bagel. But that's another topic for another day. Alyssa, Maurice Stockton, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's always good to see you.
Thanks so much for having me.
And that'll do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.